Hey everyone, welcome to episode 78 of the Penciled In Podcast. Today it is the business episode. We are talking with Nicki Workman today, who is coming on to give us advice about business as it concerns artists. Might touch on some legal things and all that fun stuff, including taxes.
It's business time.
It's business time. Welcome to the show, Nicki. It's great to have you on. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I think where we're going to start, we've been through some categories of stuff you guys will probably need to know. I think the one that's going to ease us in, well, the most easily, marketing, I think we'll start with. So for artists, how would you suggest they go about getting their work out and about and being seen? And shall we go for the do's first? What would be some positive things to do?
Sure. So just to kind of set my background so that you guys understand, where I'm coming from with my advice is I'm a 30-year corporate professional. I've done a multitude of roles in primarily IT and things around IT, but my current role is I'm a product manager. So the role of a product manager is to have a vision for your product and to get buy-in for that vision for your product from multiple stakeholders, both internal and external, and then to drive the execution of that vision. So I work with the development teams, I work with marketing, I work with sales, I work with legal. It truly is a cross-functional job. So I've been able to pick up a lot of things over the years from several different functional areas. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching my advice, or that I generally approach my advice as far as for creatives. With marketing, I would say the biggest thing for me is social media is great. Don't get me wrong. Social media is a wonderful tool, but it is only one tool. Please do not depend or put all of your marketing efforts behind just social media. Have your own personal web domain. Whether it's
Lindsey.
So for example, one of the first things that I did when my husband Lynn and I started dating is I went and purchased the domain lynnworkman.com. And I stood up a quick WordPress site for him because my husband, bless his heart, is not technical. Fantastic artist, but he struggles with his iPhone. So it had to be something that was super simple for him as a non-technical person who's not comfortable with tech to update. And he's even said that the WordPress site that I created for him is super simple for him to update. He can upload his images to the gallery. He can do blog posts, but you have control over your web URL and domain. So that's where you can start building your own personal brand. You can control what's displayed there because let's face it, Facebook algorithms today is not what Facebook algorithms is tomorrow. So,
May I ask you a quick question about the web domain thing? Because I use WordPress as well. I used to host elsewhere, but now to kind of cut expenses, I own my own domain, ingridhardy.com. I've owned it for like 8 years now, I think. But I host it in WordPress now. Do you think, of course, you have a limit of what you can do with the image and all that. Do you think that's a good idea, or should I go back to hosting elsewhere?
Depends. So my thing would be is if it's working for you, then that's a great idea. For some folks so for me as a photographer, that wouldn't work because I just would blow up the image storage too quickly.
Oh God, yeah.
So for me, for my creative hobby, I do self-hosting, or I have a hosting plan. It's actually shared between my domain and the one that we have for Lynn, as well as his geek travel blog, Have Geek Will Travel. So we have 3 URLs on the same hosting plan, which allowed us to be a little bit cheaper as far as the expenses, because if we were doing separate hosting plans for each site, that starts adding up the cost. So since we were able to consolidate those three into one hosting plan, it brought the cost down a little bit.
Okay, good advice. Very good advice. May I ask which hosting service you use?
DreamHost.
DreamHost. I used to use them. Okay. Dependable?
I think I pay like $15 a month.
Oh, not bad at all.
Yeah, no. But I've literally had them for something close to 15. So it has to be at least 15 years now. So, and I've never really had a problem. It's always been pretty stable and not a whole lot of, crashes and things like that. So I've been pretty happy with them.
Cool. So
Awesome.
Go ahead, Lindsay, please. My bad.
It's all right if you were going to stay on topic, because I was going to move on to other avenues of marketing. But if you have extra questions to ask,
please. No, nothing worth that.
So
We're on a time limit here, so go ahead, Lindsay.
So the biggest don't there, I would say, is, again, I'm not ragging on social media, but I feel like too many artists feel like, oh, I have a Facebook page and that's all I need to promote myself. If you're putting all your eggs in one basket, you're setting yourself up for failure. So really think about diversifying how you try to reach out to your audiences. Obviously, social media is a good tool, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, Facebook. As a photographer, I tend to use Instagram more than the other two. I tend to leave Facebook for just personal stuff. But I think part of that also depends upon the nature of your creative endeavor. For a sketch card artist like you guys or Lynn, I feel like it probably is more important to be on Facebook, because there's pretty large sketchbook groups that congregate on Facebook. So both of artists and of consumers that are purchasing the sketch cards. So I think it's important to understand, for the type of creativeness that you do, whether it's art, photography, writing, whatever it is, understand where your potential customers are and try to gravitate toward those avenues.
So first, in terms of like paper marketing, like magazines and stuff, do you think that's pretty pointless nowadays, or?
Yes. I mean, unless you're doing, I think the only one that may still be of any value, and I would say the value of it is less than it used to be, is if you are a comic book creator and you get space in something like Diamond Previews or something like that, because that's still where the comic book shops go to do is looking through previews. That can still have value, but in general, print, I just don't see the value there anymore. We do just in my corporate job, we do very little print advertising these days. Almost all of our advertising is either email distributions to our customer lists or our prospective customer lists, social media, advertising through our corporate website. We have a corporate blog that we try to drive traffic to, as well as a big avenue for us are trade shows. So industry trade shows. So we will have a big presence at industry events, both in the way of people and just visibility. We try to make sure our company name and logo so we'll sponsor events, for example, and have people there at our booth and be able to talk to folks. So, that's really where we focus on. And I think that's a good approach for artists as well. So I think too many times, sometimes for those who set up at conventions, obviously conventions are a great place to sell your stuff, and they can be a great place to network with both other artists and potential publishers, whether that's sketch publishers, comic book publishers, whatever. But I don't think enough people think about using the conventions as a marketing tool.
I have been trying to, but the sketch cards in the UK, they're not as popular as in the US. Most people haven't heard of them, or they don't collect trading cards, and I've been wanting to push the marketing for that to get them more interested. You know, do you have any tips for how you actually approach your marketing? Like, I don't know, do you need like a catchy tagline, or, I mean,
the first thing I tell folks is it really fits more with comic book folks than sketch cards, but I still think that this makes more sense to try to think about how you can do this from a sketch card perspective. Is what's your elevator pitch?
Right. Can you explain what an elevator pitch is?
Sure. For those who aren't familiar with what an elevator pitch is your typical elevator ride is anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, right? It depends upon the size of the building and the speed of the elevator and things like that. But
right.
You have to be able to explain your product in less than a minute. What's the hook for your thing? So with Lynn, for example, my husband, when he and his partner were doing their comic book Bushy Tales, Lynn had worked down to literally one sentence as his elevator pitch for their comic book.
Right. Okay.
And it took him a while to refine that. And that's typical. I will say that even with our own products and services, that's something we spend a lot of time on internally in my day job, is what is the key hook here for me to explain the product? Oh, it's what we call in corporate America, what's the value proposition? What's the thing that makes, what problem am I solving, or what makes this thing unique, why you should buy it from me? So think about that from your art perspective as well. Is there a hook there that you can really pithy just pop off to somebody and say, this is how I describe my art? Because like, so for example, Lynn now has transitioned more into the monster guy, because a lot of the art that he does is the classic movie monsters and horror and things like that. So he's the monster guy now. So that's really where I would encourage you to think about how can you describe either your particular art style, or if you're working on a particular sketch card set, if that set has a theme like we were discussing earlier, the cats and dogs, I would really kind of think about that to say, what kind of really short hook can I build around that would catch people's attention?
That's actually fantastic. That's actually how to sell your book. If you're writing a book or something, ideally you want to be able to propose your book to a buyer, to a publisher. And so if you can't squish it down into like 30 seconds or something, well, you have to go back to the drawing board and figure it all out. But it's actually kind of a really good way. I'm sorry?
People have zero attention span. So if you can't say it really quickly, they tune you out, and they don't listen. So it has to be something as short and succinct as possible.
And it's also a pretty cool way for you yourself to understand what you do. If you're kind of like, well, I don't know, do I like to do this? Do I like to do that? Blah, 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 blah. So you think about all your stuff and you have to flush it all down into one thing. So
and that really is helpful for you as an artist, because what are you as an artist? It's kind of what I mentioned to you before we started recording. As a hobbyist photographer, I haven't decided what I want my photography to be when I grow up, because right now it truly is just a hobby. It's my happy place. It's where I go to escape the stress of my day job and right now graduate school. So it really is. It really is one of those things where I haven't put the thought into where do I want this to go. If I do start getting serious about trying to monetize my photography, then that's where I'm really going to have to sit down and do the work. Exactly what I was explaining to you guys is how would I explain myself and what I want to shoot to others.
I think I mean, your photography sounds really interesting because you do a lot of landscapes. People love landscapes. They love a landscape on the wall, don't they?
They do. And so I found myself gravitating toward landscapes because I joke somewhat when folks say, "Well, why don't you shoot weddings or events?" I'm like, I don't like people enough. And there is a certain level of truth that I like to be able to just stand in the corner and observe and shoot. So I love doing, standing in the corner and just blending in and watching kids play and just let kids be kids, just doing the things that kids do and then shoot because they're more natural. Posing
Candid is so much better.
Hats.
I mean, candid is fantastic. I always loved it when I was working as a portrait artist. They send you the photos and it's all the big smiles looking at the camera, and I'm like, I like ones that are really much more natural than that. It makes just a lot nicer picture.
Well, that and you get the personality of the subject that you're shooting versus the what we used to call here in the States the Olin Mills. Where every picture was the same pose.
Right, so we've been through a little bit about marketing. Next, shall we move on to sorry.
One last thing, because I'm thinking of you, Lindsey. What about email lists? Do you think that an email list is important to have in this day and age?
It can be. I think there's value to them. I would say just make sure you have reasonable expectations about your email, and think about what you want your email campaign to achieve. So when we do email campaigns at work, they're typically either one of two flavors. It's either we're announcing a specific product enhancement or new product that we're rolling out, and here's all the wonderful things about this new product, or we will do general awareness type things because the application that we have as our main product is massive, and there's multiple products associated with it, and a lot of folks don't understand.
Hi. Right, hang on.
This is Isaac.
Quite all right.
Right. Guys, we haven't got much time on this one, so give her a quick hello. Say hello, Nicki.
Hi.
And we will speak to you soon. I won't be too long.
Okay.
Right, quick, because she's short for time, darling. I knew that was going to happen.
All right.
It's so the other flavor is just general awareness. Did you know that you could do this with our product? So think about what you would want the main goal of your email distribution list to be. Is it to, for example, for a sketch card artist, I'm going to be participating in this set, and it's going to be released in the fall, and be sure to look out for, this set, and maybe links to where they can purchase the set. If it's a Kickstarter campaign, obviously that's kind of a thing in and of itself. You are promoting a specific time boxed event, so that you would have different expectations for what you're trying to achieve with the email campaign, because you're just trying to drive as much traffic as possible to that Kickstarter campaign to get people to back your Kickstarter. So I guess a lot of my advice boils down to the one really key element. Sit down and really think about what you're trying to achieve. And sorry, cat butt here. Think about what you're really trying to achieve and plan for it. Because I think too often artists approach the business side of their craft as a shotgun approach. They don't sit down and have a plan. Sit down and create what we call a product plan. Right now I'm working on product plans for the portfolio of products that I'm responsible for managing for the next 3 years. Where do I want to take each one of my products for the next 36 months? And some are short-term goals, some are medium-term goals, and some are longer-term goals, so that I can plan out. Number one, I have to understand where I want this thing to go. What need am I serving with my customers? But then I have to compete for resources within the organization, right? To say, hey, I need developers for my thing over here, and here's why I need you to put resources over here on my project versus someone else's project, because here's the value that I can bring to the company by us doing this. You need to do the same thing for yourself as an artist. Where do you want to take your and you can approach it a couple different ways. Where do I want to take my art? What skills do I want to develop? Do I want to learn a new technique? Do I want to try a new medium? If you're a marker person and you've never done watercolors, I want to, over the next year, I want to learn watercolors. Make a plan for how you're going to achieve that. And because if you don't plan for it, you're not going to do it.
That is gold. Absolute gold. To really have a plan, which I'm saying this as someone who really just wings it most of the time. I've only in the past few years this beginning to make mini plans of, well, maybe I should do this to achieve that, because I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up yet. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up yet, just like you. So being able to say, well, okay, we're going to have a Kickstarter project about bees. What do we want these bees to achieve? How many people do we want them to sting? And you make your plan. No, I love it. Okay. I hope everybody
write it down, because writing it, it's one thing to say, oh, I want to teach myself watercolors, or, oh, I want to learn how to edit photos better in Lightroom. If you take the time to write it down, you're holding yourself accountable to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's harder
when you're in the face. You can't play.
And I would literally post it. I mean, if you've got a workspace, I'm sitting here in my home office at the moment, put it up on a pegboard or tape it to the wall. Do something, or, you can do it electronically, just make sure it's visible where you're seeing it all the time. And you go, what am I doing today to meet this plan? What am I doing this week to meet this plan?
Okay. I hope everybody's listening, taking notes for that one. That's like excellent. Should we go
Shall we move on to financial? Because this is one I'm sure all just, oh God.
So this is probably where I see some of the most catastrophic mistakes made, because you can get yourself in so much trouble so quickly. I'm going to start off with this caveat. I am not a tax professional. And that's my first piece of advice. When in doubt, go to a tax professional in your area. I am somewhat versed in tax laws here in the States, especially around creatives, because that's the laws that, I have to make sure that I'm complying with when we file our taxes every year. And obviously taxation differs from EU, UK, Canada. So if the financial advice I'm going to give is going to be very generic for that reason. But for the love of God, it's cheaper to spend a couple $100 and go to a CPA or a tax professional and get your questions answered versus getting yourself in trouble with the tax authorities. So when in doubt, go to a professional. The other thing I would also say is record keeping. If you're going to claim business expenses, you had better make sure that you can back it up with documentation.
Keep those receipts.
Keep those receipts. And I would personally recommend digitizing them, because it is real easy to lose a little piece of paper that's this big, and you're going, oh crap, where did I put that? I need this receipt for, my CPA to do my taxes. But as you get your receipts for the year, just scan them and have a folder for that year on your computer or an external hard drive, someplace easily accessible, where as you go and you get these receipts, you scan them. As you get invoices from different gigs, scan them, or get purchase orders, or scan everything. Just throw it on the flatbed scanner, scan it, save it as JPEG, have a folder for each tax year. That way, you know everything associated with my taxes is in this folder for this year. And these are the business expenses that I can claim, and I know exactly what I need to do.
That's really good. So even for people who aren't organised, if you stay on top of it and just scan in your folder, you know, it's not such a big thing to contend with. Yeah.
Absolutely. Take a picture of them. So when I do business travel, I have to do expense reports to get my money back for, you know, my business travel. And there's actually an app that my company uses where, as I'm traveling, I can literally take a picture of the receipt and it will add the receipt to my expense report. And I just go in and type in a couple pieces of information. And then when I get back home, my expense report's basically done. I have to do a couple cleanup things and then I just hit submit. So it makes getting my money back a lot faster. And if I use that receipt while I'm traveling for a week, I've got the digital copy already in my phone. I don't have to
And you don't forget to do it. You don't forget about it. Oh, that's great.
The other thing I would recommend is if you're doing a pretty good volume, if most of your income is coming from art, I would highly recommend looking at some type of either open source or very inexpensive accounting software. One of them that comes to mind is QuickBooks. It's pretty easy to use. It's designed for small businesses because that you can enter things throughout the year. It would help you track your invoices. Have I gotten paid for this job yet? Yes or no? Because you could generate the invoice from QuickBooks. You wouldn't have to manually type up your invoice for each gig. And then you can literally run a report at the end of the year and it would spit out, you know, your income, and you can verify that against any of the tax forms that you're getting in. So because some folks are better than others about sending you, for example, here in the States, 1099s. But also just because they send you a 1099 doesn't mean they've got the right information on the 1099. So don't trust that they are giving you the right information. Double check it.
That's similar to Canadian stuff. Sometimes we have to be absolutely sure that what they're sending us is the right thing. It's happened to us to have errors on ours.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in a previous job that I had, I worked at an insurance company, and my job was paying agent commissions. And part of that job was making sure that 1099s that were sent out for those agents were correct. And we had to do corrections all the time because things get messed up, records get messed up. Oh, this wasn't credited correctly, or no, this didn't get registered right. So, you know, then you have to do corrected 1099s and send them out to both the person and the tax authority. So just because you get it from the person doesn't mean it's right. Verify.
I keep my stuff in a well, I used to use Excel, but I use numbers now in a file. I'm guessing that's probably not adequate, although I don't make much money at my
I mean, so I would say use the tools that are most comfortable and that meet the need. If you can keep track of everything in Excel and that works for you, then that's great. I do think once you get to a certain size, then you start outgrowing Excel, and then, you know, it starts.
You know, wait to try getting to be a bigger size.
You know, because, you know, for years when I was helping Lynn manage his sketch card gigs, we had an Excel spreadsheet. It was, you know, okay, we're doing this top set, tops, Empire Strikes Back, widescreen, you know, We sent it.
I'm really sorry. I'm just going to say, if I suddenly disappear, I've only got 5% left on my iPod.
No, Lindsay, charge it.
I know. It's just told me now. But
So,
right.
I think that people get too obsessed sometimes with, am I using the right tool? If the tool works for you, it's the right tool.
Okay, that's good to know. We're not all.
If you get a tool that you're not comfortable with, you're not going to use it, and then that defeats the purpose.
Okay, good
Very
advice.
true. Mm-hmm. So, keeping on this kind of track, shall we talk a little bit about legal?
Yes. If nothing else is taken away from this conversation, everything has to be in writing. It doesn't matter how well you know this person, how good of friends you are, or that you worked together for how many years. It has to be in writing. I'm not saying everything has to go to an attorney necessarily, but it all has to be in writing, or you're setting yourself up for major heartaches down the road. So, as an example, when my husband and his partner had a studio together, they sat down and they wrote up a partnership agreement as far as, here's the name of the studio, here's the split between, it's a 50-50 split of the studio. And it even went so far as to say, here's what I'm contributing, here's what I'm contributing, here's our agreement on how we want to handle the stuff that we create together, and how much who owns what, and how we will approach dissolving this if we have to, because ultimately they did have to dissolve the partnership, not because things went wrong between the two of them, but because his partner at the time, Dave, had a day job that was paying the bills, and he was laid off. So to qualify for unemployment benefits, they had to dissolve the partnership, or else he would have been blocked from getting unemployment.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they actually, had to dissolve the studio because of that. But it was a pretty painless process because everything was already in writing. It was a very simple notarized document to dissolve it. So don't think that you have to go through, an attorney. Sometimes just having a piece of paper that you both sign that's notarized goes a long way.
Okay.
Right. So, say you were dealing with a customer. I mean, most of my customers, it goes through Facebook messages, the back and forth. I don't really get them to sign anything. So would the Facebook messages not stand up if they'd asked for this thing and you've agreed to do it and they've agreed to pay, and say they didn't pay?
If you get into the process of having to go through a court proceeding, it's better than nothing, but it's still not as strong as a signed piece of paper. So again, coming from a photography angle here, if you're doing portrait photography, you really need to have your models on the release. Otherwise, you could run into issues with image likeness rights. So even when we got married, we as part of the contract, when we were saying, okay, here's what we're agreeing to as far as you're going to be here on this date, you're going to take pictures for X amount of hours, and you're going to present me proofs X number of days after, and do I get to keep certain things, or you only get to keep certain things? It also had a release clause in it as far as just, yes, I'm giving you permission to take pictures at this event, and I'm giving away the likeness rights as far as, allowing you to do this. So I would generally recommend not depending upon emails, Facebook messages alone. It's a good place to start. It's a good place to work out the details. Then just type up something really quick in Word or Google Docs and just have somebody, and it doesn't have to be, you have to sign it physically and have a physical, just, if you can digitally sign it and scan it, or physically sign it and scan it, that's usually sufficient to stand up in court proceedings. But I would tend to recommend those. get that in a separate document.
So
Right.
take your business seriously and make sure things are written down and everything is clear on paper so that if something happens, you've got.
And it ties into another conversation we had before we started recording, in that it gets into your complaint resolution. It's really hard to say, no, this is what we agreed to, if you don't have it in one centralized place. Going back and forth to try to find, no, this is what you agreed to in an email chain. I know it's hard because I go through this at work, just not from a legal standpoint, just getting, when I go to executive leadership to get sign off on a project, I have to actually have them sign off on something, because buried, in a 20 email stream. Well, I didn't agree to that. Yes, you did on this date. Here's the email here. It's a lot easier if you have that one piece of paper to go to and say, no, here's everything that we agreed to, and you agreed to it on this date.
Okay.
So has that covered everything you think is important to say for legal and financial?
The other thing I would say with legal, and and this is a really complicated topic, and I am by no means a legal expert in this realm, but be careful of the intellectual property laws, both protecting yourself and your intellectual property, as well as not infringing on someone else's. So as artists, you're always in kind of a sticky wicket as what's fair use, right? As far as, well, I drew this picture of Spider-Man, I can sell this picture of Spider-Man. If it's a one-off, you're probably okay. But if you're a wall of prints guy at a con where you're mass producing and selling 10,000 prints of Spider-Man, I'm sorry, that's not legal. Marvel's going to come after you eventually.
That's a really good point.
Be aware of, are you exposing yourself to potential legal liability in what you're doing in art, not just protecting your art.
And it's a fine line, because when we're going to conventions and things like that, you're seeing, like, even if you're kind of, being careful and not drawing Spider-Man and making card prints, 1 million of them, and selling them, there are a lot of people that are doing that.
Absolutely.
As you yourself have seen with Lynn, it's really risky to do. And if they catch us, I mean, creatives and if we're doing that, it makes it hard for everyone else to keep doing and keep staying in the business and creating things like that. So it's kind of better to create, which actually brings me on legal to another one. Like Lindsey and I are kind of creating our own IPs, if you like. Is there something legal we should do? There are others that are watching, I think, hopefully, that are creating their own IPs too, or their own creations and things. Should they be licensed? Should they be doing something legal to keep it theirs?
File for your copyright. At least here in the States, you can file for copyright for your things. That is a level of protection. And if you go to the process of actually filing for copyright, then you have paper documentation, right? So that it's not going to stop people from infringing, but it's a lot easier for you to prove that this is my thing you're infringing on, and stop it, or else I'm going to take legal proceedings if necessary.
Okay.
If there is something that you can trademark it, because trademark is a much higher level of protection than copyright. Now, I will tell you, the trademark process is not, at least here in the States, it's not a simple process, and you may not get the trademark. So when Dave were doing their comic book, they tried to trademark title of the book, Bushy Tails, and the trademark was not. They went through the legal channels. They had an attorney help them do it. They spent several $100s, and trademark office said, no, too generic. And I'm like, too generic? What? So just be prepared that if you can, trademark it and get legal assistance to help you navigate the trademark process.
Okay.
Trademark really is the highest level of protection that you can do.
It definitely is. I think what puts people off getting trademarks can be the expense.
Yes.
I looked into them before. They can be quite costly. So you're probably best off waiting until you get something that's selling well to, go for that trademark.
And that's what I was about to say. You really need to make sure that you're committed to before you go through the time and expense of going through the trademark process. If this isn't something that you're 100% behind, if there's any doubt in your brain that if this is really what I want to do, then you're not going to go through that process.
Okay. But you can do at least the copyright. You can do a copyright.
Because the copyright, I think you literally can just upload stuff to the website, and I think it's free, if I remember correctly. Or
in
at least
Canada, I know you can. I think if you go to the government website, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in Canada, you can go to the government website, and they do have. It's a bit of a job to get slogged through all their pages, but you can get there. I did it with the books I wrote, and you can put the title in and copyright that, and at least for that, you're good to go.
Yeah, and same here in the States. I mean, every government website sucks because they don't put any type of thought into the user experience. So you're lucky if it works.
I remember how people used to do it back in the day. When I was first at college. I mean, obviously, the copyright's automatically yours. It's just proving it. Exactly. So they used to post it to themselves, so it had the stamp on from the post office and everything, and just not open it, and then that was proof. I mean, I suppose you don't need to do that now with the internet and everything, but that is another way you can do it if you can't be bothered with all the websites.
Curious, I never thought of doing it that way. So you just email you send a mail.
Yeah, you post it to yourself.
Okay.
And then don't open it.
Oh, you post the name to yourself, the name of the company to yourself?
Whatever you're copywriting. If you've done like the original drawing of the character, post it to yourself, and then you've got it there, and it's dated, and it's official, and it's That's how we used to do it in the long ago.
The other thing I will say, as far as folks infringing on your IP, it's going to happen.
I've had it happen.
And you have to pick and choose the battles. So you really want to focus on the folks that are, because for example, there was a friend of ours had an image stolen that was being printed on T-shirts by a major retailer. They went after them. That's the level, when that type of stuff happens, you absolutely go after them because they're mass producing your art.
Yeah.
I've seen a case. It was a small printers, and they went after Target because all Target had done is nick their design and flipped it. But these big lawyers, they know how to drag it out. They know what they're doing. So I mean, this company ended up broke. I think a lot of people crowdfunded them because it was just so wrong of Target to be doing this. Dragging it out until they had no more money left because they were wrong. You don't just take someone's artwork and flip it horizontally and suddenly it's different,
The other thing that I've noticed is as you build up your community around your art of both other creatives and folks who enjoy your art, they will help you police this. So, for example, Lynn had licensed his art to a T-shirt company. It was all legal. We had the contracts. We got paid. It's all good. But a friend of ours, or actually several friends of ours, knew this design was Lynn's and was at a con. And our phones started blowing up on, this guy's stolen your stuff. We're like, okay, take a picture of the booth. And so they took a picture of the booth and we're like, oh, no, they're good. They paid us to do this. They're like, oh, okay. So your fellow community will help watch out for it. I've seen it time and time again where not just with Lynn, but with friends of ours, the community rallies around and goes, oh, no, they stole that from such and such. I recognize it.
Yeah.
That's sweet of people. There are nice people out there.
And
on the subject of
the internet is a wonderful thing for shaming these people. And that's when, even if you can't stop them necessarily from stealing your work, or they've already made a certain amount of money from it, public shaming works. Or just awareness of these people steal stuff. Don't support these businesses that steal from creatives. It's hard enough being a creative, and it's hard enough making money as a creative. We don't need people stealing from us too.
Definitely. On the subject of people, I think the other category we're going to talk about was customer service and how to present, maybe how you communicate with your customers, and if you are a buyer, how you communicate with the artist.
Yeah, so one of the things I don't think artists understand is when you start doing things like selling stuff on, doing Kickstarter campaigns or publishing your own work, whether it's self-publishing a comic book or self-publishing a sketch card set or whatever, you are now running a small business. You're running typically a sole proprietorship. So it comes with all the problems that come with running a business. You have to worry about accounting. You have to worry about marketing. You have to worry about the financial. But you also have to worry about what I will call customer support. You have customers that are going to at times be mad at you. How do you handle that? Especially with the Kickstarter campaigns. Although I would say sometimes the way that people communicate with artists online, gets a little entitled. You don't get to tell me how to do my art. But that's a different conversation. But specifically around things like Kickstarter and Kickstarter rewards or fulfillment around that, or even Patreon rewards for those that are doing Patreons. Having a process for dispute resolution is important, and making sure that, in your case, the customer came in guns a-blazing, and you didn't really have a chance to offer them customer support until because they were already, threatening from the hop. Yeah. So that's always difficult to deal with. But the main thing is try to de-escalate as much as possible. I understand you're upset. Let's talk about what the problem is. Let's see how we can resolve the problem, for both sides, because.
So maybe my response was wrong. I got up, walked around, because I hadn't done anything wrong. Everything had been by the timeline. Everything was fine. So I got up, walked around, took a few deep breaths, and then I refunded his money, and I'm fine to move on. But now I'm getting a dispute because I refunded his money.
So how you might handle that in the future if that comes up is I'm sorry, there's obviously been a miscommunication in the schedule. According to the schedule that was published as part of the Kickstarter campaign, it stated that product was scheduled to be shipped around X date. We are still tracking to ship or fulfillment around this date. Please confirm your questionnaire information for me to make sure that I have the correct address to ship everything to, so that I can ensure that when I start shipping, you receive this. Now, would that be enough to calm down the guy that you have? Maybe not. I mean, because obviously he didn't pay attention the first time, or the second time or the third time, because you're publishing the update saying, hey, we're on track. Hey, we're good. But that's really all you can do at that point, is just try to de-escalate. So obviously there's been a miscommunication. Let's see if we can do. And then if he just really is adamant that no, you haven't done the thing. And really, at that point, that you've done the only thing that you can do, and that's refund the money. If you're really unhappy with me, that's all I can do. But I'm not going to refund the money and give you the product. It's one or the other. It's you either, I'll make sure you're in the first batch, when I'm shipping stuff out, so that you get yours as quickly as possible, or I have to give you the money back. Those are your two options.
Okay, good advice.
I would be tempted to just refund. If somebody came to me and they were so mean like that and threatening and without an initial message or anything, or seeing if you can put things right, that would get my back up, I think. Maybe I have to learn to.
It's a side of the creatives that we try real hard to put aside. It's the sensitive side. You have to, for the business, as you've been explaining to us for this whole time, you have to look analytically at a lot of the work that you do, but you have to keep a bit of that core of emotion and feelings and all that. You have to keep it because it's what you're producing.
Absolutely. And it's hard. I mean, even when I'm dealing with angry customers in my day job, because customer complaints get escalated to me as the product manager, because ultimately I'm responsible for this product. So if somebody's not happy with my product, they come to me. So it can be hard, very hard. I've been doing this for 20 plus years now, and it's still hard when someone comes guns a-blazing at you and you haven't done anything wrong. It's really hard not to back up and get defensive and get angry. And, well, wait a minute, why are you yelling at me? I haven't done anything to you. And that's when you just have to, but I would say you did the right thing, because the one thing I always caution my husband, don't type angry.
No.
Don't reply angry. If you have to step away from the computer, take a walk, go play with the dog, come back. Or and I do this myself as well, if I get something, in an email or something at work that really sets me off, I will open up a blank Word document and just type out everything I would really like to say to this person.
Genius.
Or I'll call them everything but a child of God, just to get it out of my system. And then I close the Word document without.
So you don't email the wrong one.
No, I don't. Because you don't want to send the wrong thing. Trust me. That's the reason why I don't type it in email. Open up a blank Word doc, close email, just close out. Open up that blank Word document and just type it all out to get it out of your system. And then I realized, okay, now I can go back and reply to this email that has really set me off in a more professional manner than I would have initially.
I love that idea, though. That's really a good. I did not think of that. That's fabulous.
Go find your Zen and then come back to it.
Yes, because it allows you to just blow that steam off, and then now I can reply in the correct corporate professional manner. I can say basically the same thing, but in more professional words. Less of the 4-letter ones.
All in capitals.
Right. Well, and that's also, you say that, but I think one of the things that people don't realize is there actually is email etiquette. If you're typing somebody in all caps, you're shouting at them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So be aware of the etiquette of electronic communication, and that's hard sometimes, and that's really also what I try to take into account with electronic communications. It's very hard to judge tone.
That's right.
Definitely.
Because when you're sitting having a conversation like this with someone, I get all these nonverbal cues from you that lets me know, oh, you're joking with me because there's a smile on your face, or you're being sarcastic. There's all these nonverbal cues that you do not get in written communication. You just have, all you have is the words. So you have to be very careful in your word selection to make sure that you're communicating the point that you really want to communicate in the tone that you're wanting to communicate with. Now, if I'm being angry and I want somebody to know that I'm being angry about
That's easy.
like it's missing deadline or something, then there's a way for me to do that. But I don't want if, but if I'm not being angry, and I run into this more when in the Teams channels when we're chatting back and forth among the team. If I'm joking around with them and I think, oh, that might be taken a certain way, I'll immediately come back in with either another comment or a GIF or something to give more context around my message.
Little laughy face, I tend to do.
Just say, I'm
not serious.
Yeah, just joking.
It'd be nice if there works out some sort of color code system. Like, this is sarcasm.
That's right.
So many people take things the wrong way. You know what I
mean? Back in the old internet days when message boards were still a thing, we actually had codes for certain things. So if you were typing something on the message board and you ended it with a forward slash and the letter S, that meant everything that I said just before that was sarcastic.
Well, I didn't know that. I mean, I used to be on message boards all the time. I had no idea.
That's pretty cool. So if you can learn the code.
If you can learn the code, I mean, it was you had to be around the message boards for a while before you understood what the codes were. But, I think we've lost some of that as we've migrated into social media and texting and Slack and Microsoft Teams and some of that, where it is sometimes more challenging to communicate with each other. We have more channels to communicate, but sometimes it's harder to communicate because of the channel.
Without the dual understanding, because both of you have got to be in on it, haven't you? Otherwise, there's no point doing your little slash and R if they're an S or whatever if they don't know what it means.
Exactly. So, it's obviously things I'll say to some of my friends at work that I won't say to other folks because they know me and they know my sick, sarcastic sense of humor. So, and they're the same. So we just get each other. So we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Why it can be a little tricky sometimes with emails, messages, and all that to really be, because maybe the person who sent the message also didn't realize what they're doing,
Absolutely.
Either being too friendly or too aggressive or too this or too that in their minds. And I'm guilty sometimes of forming incomplete thoughts, as everybody knows over this past year of podcasting. Sometimes it comes out in the way you'll write a message. You think you wrote everything down that the other person needs to know, but actually you didn't. So
exactly. Well, and that's for some of the things like that. I'll have someone, especially at work, read something for me because I know what I'm talking about, especially if it's something more technical. And I'll have someone who's not associated with the project read it and go, does this you literally know nothing about my project or what I'm doing. Does this sentence make sense to you? And if they go, no, then I know I need to go back and rework this. But if they say, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, then I'm explaining it, because that's the challenge of my job is I have to be able to talk tech to the development team. So I have to be very technical with this group, but I'm also talking to customers who are at different levels of technical aptitude. And I'm also talking to internal stakeholders like executive level management, and they're not technical. And you have to keep things as short and concise as possible with executive leadership, because they just don't have time for a 20-page PowerPoint presentation. I've got to be able to distill everything down into 2 paragraphs.
That sounds like
is all the attention span that you're going to get from.
Lindsey, do we have any more points to go over? I think Nicki's going to have her next appointment already.
I think we've just about. I mean, I could have probed Nicki a bit more, like with the marketing and everything, but she is busy.
Yeah, well, I think we would really like to have you back on, though. There are a few things I'd like to expand a little bit when you have more time.
Absolutely.
But overall, I think to shrink everything down into a small elevator pitch, what would your most important advice to creatives such as Lindsey, myself, and everybody else, be it publishers or artists, is the most important thing that we should remember?
create a plan, execute the plan. The plan can change, and your plan should change as you get additional inputs. As you know, you start selling something, and you go, "Oh, this didn't work. I need to adjust this." It's okay to change your plan, but have a plan. Because failure to plan is planning for failure.
That's really good advice, because a lot of people would think that, if they were going to plan something, it's set in stone and I must do this and I must do that. But Absolutely. If you can edit it and change it as you go along, there's nothing to be scared of.
And that's the whole point. I mean, that's what we do in my day job. I'm planning out 3 years of work right now. I guarantee you that's going to change because economic factors change, political things change, competitive landscape changes. My competitor does this. It's not meant to be static. It's just meant to give you guideposts. Because again, if you don't know what you're shooting for, then how do you know that you're being successful?
How do you even create a plan if you don't know what you're aiming for?
Exactly. So the plan has to be what we call SMART. It has to, and it's an acronym. It has to be, timely. It has to be measurable. It has to be all of these things, or else it's useless, because you have to have things along the way that tell you that you're being successful. What are those measures of success? Sometimes it's real simple. Is it revenue? Sure. But not everything is going to be revenue generative up front.
That's a really good point.
So especially if you're starting up as a publisher, right? You're doing a startup business. You're going to have costs up front before you start breaking even. So plan for that. Say, okay, I plan to break even in 18 months, for example. And this is how I'm going to get there. I need to have X number of card sets by X number of people, and they need to sell X number of units for me to be able to break even.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you do need something so you're on the right track. I mean, like I would say, it would be revenue right now. That would be the only way that I know that it's going the right way. But it'd be great to look into everything else that can maybe give you clues that you're on the right track.
Well, some of that with a startup, for example, maybe your engagement numbers on social media. So if you're trying to build a word of mouth for something new, if you're doing an email campaign, for example, you send out 100 emails. The tools that you have today to manage email campaigns will say you send 100 out, 10 of them with bad email addresses, 25 people open your email. So then you have at least, and you can monitor those stats over time. So as you tweak your email campaign, you tweak your messaging, ideally you should see those metrics trending as far as your engagement.
MailChimp is good
for So again, revenue is obviously the number one. we all need to make money. We all have bills to pay. But it's not the only one, especially when you're first starting off. Where the revenue may not be there for a little bit, but you can still have measures to say, I'm on the right track.
Okay.
If I keep executing to this plan, I should get to the revenue.
In other words, it's fine to throw spaghetti at the wall like I've been doing for like all my life. It's fine to throw spaghetti at the wall, but eventually you have to kind of pick and choose a few of those spaghettis to make a plan with it.
Did you ever see that episode of South Park with the underpants gnomes? The underpants gnomes had a business plan. Step 1, collect underpants. Step 2, step 3, profit. No, what step 2 was? They were just collecting all these underpants. Sorry, these conversations like that just remind me of.
Well, I think artists may be particularly guilty of this, but I'll be honest with you. Plenty of big corporations are also guilty of this. It's what I call the field of dreams strategy. If we build it, then they will come. That the money's just going to automatically start rolling in as soon as we throw this thing out to the universe. That's rarely how this thing works. So you as an artist, I mean, you can sit in your studio and create this wonderful piece of art, and you can just throw it out into the world. You might get lucky and sell it. It happens, but you're rolling the dice. I mean, so is that really sustainable? Probably not, unless you're someone that's already established and everybody knows who you are, and Alex Ross, for example, could probably throw out a thing that's going to sell for $20,000 because he's Alex Ross.
Yeah.
But for most of the regular folks, that's not going to work. So how are you going to get it for this wonderful painting that you just done? How are you going to get people to see it, know that it's available? Is it posting it on the internet? Is it trying to sell it through an art broker? Is it, doing an art show? There's all these different things that could potentially be the avenue to sell that thing versus, hey, I did this thing. Please buy it. Somebody please buy this thing.
Do you have any advice for, say, resources you could look at to sort of help you build a business plan and give you guidelines of how to go about it?
So you would be absolutely amazed at the volume of resources that are available for free on the internet. I use them for school because I'm actually in the final semester of graduate school. I'm finishing up my MBA. I'll be graduating in August.
Congratulations.
But a lot of my class assignments are, go out to the internet and find such and such. And there are wonderful templates that you can go look for. Now, I will say, if I can find a couple that I really like, I'll shoot them for you guys in email so that you can post them.
That'd be brilliant.
The video, because a lot of the more generic business plans are going to be probably a little too corporate for creatives or a little too technical. Yeah. And I'm not being technical as in business technical, as in a lot of them are geared toward like what I do with software development. We're going to deliver this feature in Q1 2024. We're going to deliver this feature in Q2.
It's stuff we wouldn't really need, probably.
Right. It's not in the language that you're used to thinking about it. But I would look for business plans, marketing plans, and product plans, especially if you're starting off as a publisher. What product lines do you want to sell? Do you want to sell sketch cards? Do you want to sell t-shirts? Do you want to sell magnets? I mean, what products are you going to sell? And what's your plan for each one of those products is how you're going to sell them. What's your distribution channel? What's your how much of those do you need to sell to break even before you even make a profit? Because this is your manufacturing costs for these sketch cards. Get the cards printed, for example. That should all be part of your business plan, your marketing plan, your product plan. But you should have a product plan, say, or even with a creative with a product plan, it may not be as specific as, for example, what I was talking about there with I want to be able to sell sketch cards and t-shirts and magnets. It could be more of a philosophical product roadmap. Where do I want to take my skills? So
that's a very valid point, actually.
Do I want to learn a new art medium? Do I want to go back to art school? Do I want to take these photography classes? Do I want to go to this seminar to network? With me, it really falls more under professional development because I have to figure out what my professional development path is for my job. And that's part of my review every year, to say, here's what I'm doing to make myself a better employee this year. And so mine for the past 3 years has been real simple. It's called grad school. But it could, in my situation, it could be, I'm going to go do this professional certification program, which I've done in the past or things like that. But it can be more of a philosophical approach. What do I want to be when I grow up? Later. This is where I want to take my art or my creative endeavor over the next X number of months.
Okay.
And if it's too intimidating to think about it in 3 to 5 year horizons, which is what we typically do in corporate America, keep it to the next 6 months. Keep it to the next year. What do I want to do over the next year to get from point A to point B? And what steps am I going to take to get from point A to point B? That's really what you're committing to.
So make your plan, use the social media, use your web domain, Lindsey.
I've got one. Just haven't got a website.
Create your elevator pitch. Get down and dirty with your finances, and
get professional help when needed.
We all need professional help. Just very quickly, have you got an opinion on influencers? Are they any, like, the amount of messages I get? Pay me this much money and I'll promote your stuff, and I just think, no.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm good, thank you. I'm just not interested in that whole influencer culture. If I can't make this work myself, then so be it.
That's a great point. Because, if you're putting it out there, nobody's paying attention. Who says they will? If someone with a few more thousand followers does, they will.
Better just that cup of coffee, go to a coffee shop and network instead of giving it to somebody you don't. I don't know.
Well, it's like your point about conventions. It's so great to meet people face to face, in person, and even over the internet. With your video calls, that it still feels like a more personal relationship, doesn't it?
Well, yes, and this is definitely a rant that I definitely don't have time for today. So I'm happy to come back and rant about this at another time. But not all exposure is good.
Okay, so that's the title of the next episode.
Sounds tantalizing, and she's going to leave us now. We should think about that, because you hear that saying,
all publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
I am not a believer in that statement.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just making notes for the next title that you're going to be.
Oh, we're going to be asking you that straight away.
Yep.
Wait.
Well, thank you so much, Nicki, for having taken some of your time to come on. This has been fascinating. I mean, really fascinating. I know I've gotten a bunch of things out of this.
Well, that's great, because I really, I feel like so many creatives, especially ones that have even gone through the trouble of going through art school, I feel art schools are really failing folks at times by not better arming them with some of these type topics. It's great to go to art school and learn color theory and composition and how to do oil paintings. That's great. I'm not knocking the more functional skills that you learn in art school, but if your art program is not doing some basic marketing principles, basic financial principles, basic intellectual property law, you're really failing your students, because you're not arming your students with everything that they're going to need to be successful in the art.
So we really need to look into some of these things, actually. I mean, all of us as creatives, and Lindsey and I think that the two of us should be exploring some of those things with our videos.
Definitely. I mean, at my college, we did 1 hour a week of business. And it was very, very basic, but that was only the first couple of years. And then in the degree years, they didn't do it, which I found odd, because like you say, there's more to learn, and, could have kept going with it and maybe put more hours into it, because it was kind of like just a little tiny bit. So
honestly, in my opinion, if you're coming out with an art degree, you should have a minor in business.
That would be great. That's what Jim Davies did, isn't it? The guy who created Garfield. He had qualifications in business. That's why he did so well. Apart from creating something good as well.
Okay, well, we'll let you go. I know you must be late for your next appointment. We're definitely having you back on. I'm not even going to ask you. You have to come back on.
Be happy to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having come. We're going to have all the links that we can find for everything in the show notes below. Don't forget to like this episode. Don't forget to share this episode. Don't forget to support the podcast. All that cool stuff. Thank you.
It was lovely to meet you, Nicki. Hug all your cats for me. And Lynn. Big hug to you all.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.
Bye.